Good afternoon and welcome to Around the World with ALTOUR. I am so happy and pleased to have Katina Agnew with us today, the Senior Vice President of Silversea. I have known Katina for many years in her various other companies, and she is one of our leaders in this industry and one of the best. Katina, thank you for agreeing to join me today, and welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I love going around the world, so I'm excited.
Well, last time I
Scott,
saw
where
you,
are
we
you
were in
taking us?
Portugal.
I know. Thank you for joining us aboard Silver Dawn. We had a great couple of days, and it was my first time in Portugal, actually, talking about going around the world. So that was fun.
It was a great event, and for those of you who are listening, it was their naming ceremony of their new ship, and it was phenomenal. The weather was miserable in the morning, but boy, did it clear up in time for the christening. So it was very, very fun.
Yes.
The first question I'd like to bring up today is, the first thing is always asked to us, what are your current health protocols? So I'm going to let you tell, because I do know what you're doing, but it'd be nice for our listeners to hear.
Absolutely. And, that is the question of the day. It's the question du jour every day, because almost every day you feel like something changes. And just today, actually, we announced something new with respect to our protocols. So I'll start with what we announced today. Today, we came out and have confirmed that we are requiring vaccinations for all guests who are 12 and older. Why that's important is because as we begin, of course, our summer travel in many of the destinations that our families and multi-generational travelers travel to, we were getting a lot of questions surrounding guests under the age of 12. So just today, we confirmed that 12 and above, 100% vaccinations are required, fully vaccinated, which means that you need either your one shot of J&J or the two of Moderna and Pfizer. For guests that are 11 and younger, there will be testing required, and the testing will depend upon where we are in the world. In US waters, there'll actually be two tests that will be required. It will be a PCR within 3 days and an antigen within 24. Outside of the US, it's just an antigen within 24. I know that's a lot of information. We will have it on our website actually shortly. We literally just announced this internally and coming out about an hour ago. But that's great news, because for summer travel especially, we have lots of multi-generational families that like to travel with us, especially in Alaska. And so I'm excited that we have the opportunity to do that. Outside of that, our protocols continue in that we are really following country requirements. We've had a lot of back and forth and a lot of questions regarding, do we require boosters or an additional dose? And the answer to that question simply is no. It is not required to embark a Silversea ship. We are following the local country requirements. By way of example, if you are visiting a port of call that requires you to be up to date, which could include an additional dose if your second dose was more typically than 9 months ago. So if a country requires it in order to consider you up to date and vaccinated, then we follow that country rule. Here's the special nuance, though. So I can go into Spain today not being what they consider up to date. What that just means is that I'm required to test 24 hours before I enter Spain. And we are doing the same with those guests that may not be up to date sailing on our ships. So while cumbersome, if you're not up to date in the countries that require you to, it's still accessible. And we are still currently testing on board for those who may not be up to date visiting those countries that do require it.
Oh, terrific. And our agents will also stay on top of the breaking news. And when you book, we are also there to make sure you have all these details. Now let's get to the fun part of Silverseas. I know that you have plans in 22 and 23 for some different destinations, and I'd like you to tell us some of the more unusual. We know you go to the Med and Alaska, and I just had a friend get back from the Galapagos and was just her favorite trip ever.
Yes.
Tell us some of the different destinations we may not think you go to.
So I'm so sad. I'm so excited that you just said Galapagos because that was going to be my number one. So thank you for that. One of the beauties of what we have within our expedition product is the ability to really deep dive into adventure areas of the world that guests are really yearning for. So Galapagos is one that is highly rated, and we have a purpose-built ship for this particular destination that we took delivery of in the height of the pandemic, and she's delivering incredibly well, Silver Origin. I would tell you number two that has been really hot on people's list, and we had a very successful season, although it was challenging, it was successful, is our Antarctica cruise. And our Antarctica program is really unique because we're offering essentially two paths for guests to enjoy. You can do the typical Antarctica full cruise experience where you get to sail through and back through the Drake Passage. Or we started offering this year what we call Fly and Cruise. And it is a super succinct and an easy way for you to fly into Punta Arenas. And we get the ship, we have a charter flight that takes everybody down, and we get over to King George Island, and then you have a 5 or 6 night cruise experience in Antarctica with all of your landings without having to do the Drake Passage to and from. So that's been exciting for a lot of guests. I'll tell you a third one that we're about to embark on, pun intended, is the Kimberleys, which is really exciting for a lot of guests as well. And it's, again, getting back to the worldliness of travel and deep diving into the cultural and authentic experiences that most ocean cruising and even large ships just can't call to.
That brings us to another great question. Is we know you have ships that are expedition, you have ships that are mid-size. Tell us more about the fleet. I think that our listeners would really be interested.
Yeah, we've got 10 ships currently, and our 10th is getting back in the water in just a couple of weeks. So in a few short weeks, we'll have 100% of our fleet back in full operation. We're very excited about that. But one of the most unique things about Silversea, and one of the things that drew me to this organization, was the ability that we could cater to clientele that was really just first and foremost interested in travel. So, let's forget cruise for a second. Having the opportunity to do both ocean and expedition really gets to the heart of why people want to experience the world. So our classic ship, what we call classic, is our ocean ships, which call, of course, to all 7 continents. And we have, I like to say, we follow the sun. So in best weather patterns, we're in any given area of the world. We also operate, as many of you know, because you are huge supporters of a world cruise annually. So we have our classic ocean ships, and we also have our expedition ships. Our expedition ships are as small as 50 suites in the Galapagos, as large as just about 300 guests, 150 suites. And we took a couple of our classic ships and converted them actually to full expedition. And the beauty of that is that we have the ability to provide the creature comforts of luxury travel with a larger vessel, larger suites, larger bathrooms, of course, butler service and the attention to detail, but still small enough and technologically advanced and structurally advanced to be able to call into these deep dive adventure trips. So I love the opportunity having to be able to offer both to guests. And one of the other unique things, and I think your advisors can attest to this, is that not every expedition client is an ocean client, and not every ocean client is an expedition client. But what we find is that most of your advisors are bringing us new to brand guests that may start with expedition and then continue to evolve into a more classic ocean cruising product.
Yes. And as I said, I had a friend just come back from the Galapagos, trip of a lifetime. One of the comments she made to me when we were talking the other night was the quality of the food and the service on board. and I don't think anybody can compete with you there. It was excellent.
Thank you.
And the nice part, it was a Silver Origin. They got to know the chef. It's the intimacy was just so nice. They kept commenting on that and the different crew. I think one of the things you were doing is the salt experience, which I had the opportunity to partake in recently, and it is really interesting. Please tell our listeners a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so SALT is an acronym for Sea and Land Taste. And this concept was born several years ago. It was actually, just before the pandemic. And it was really an opportunity to say, we go to all these amazing destinations, over 900. We take people to wonders of the world. How do we bring part of the wonders of the world back on board? And one of the greatest experiences, of course, is through culinary and cuisine. So SALT, Sea and Land Taste, was born and is a complete ecosystem of culinary experiences where we bring shore to ship, and we take people from ship to shore to really experience local and authentic cuisine. But it's not just about learning about things. It's tasting the local ingredients. It's understanding why a particular ingredient was used in Croatia or was used in Greece from the 1800s, and why today maybe it transformed. So you learn stories behind a lot of the culinary aspect, which is incredibly fun and unique. And one of the great things that we have is called our Salt Kitchen aboard both Silver Moon and Silver Dawn. And that kitchen, which is a restaurant, changes menus nightly. And those menus are created and curated based on the actual port of call and region that we're traveling to on that particular voyage. So depending upon where we are, we source local ingredients, we create local cuisine and menus, and we get to give our guests, we allow our guests the opportunity to experience the local cuisine in the comfort of the ship.
And don't forget the Salt Lab. That
Salt
was
Lab.
Also an incredible experience where we learned to make certain dishes and then we got to eat them.
Yes, very hands-on, interactive. And I tell people it's not just a cooking class or a cooking school. It is very interactive, but I go back to, it's one thing to walk into a cooking class and just learn how to prepare something. It's another to understand how this dish was actually created and why. And those things are really special and unique stories that you get to take back. And I think we all find in luxury travel, and your advisors can agree, that people today in luxury travel are really looking to create and collect memories versus things. And part of those stories, those great meals, the great local wine that they would have never tried on their own is part of the memory that they create.
Well, and to that, you also have the Salt Bar with
Yes.
some very unusual drinks.
Yes, I tried aboard our Silver Dawn the Aurora, which was yes, it was fantastic. I actually posted it because it was one of those smoky drinks with, it came beautiful and it was smoking. And honestly, I never would have looked at a menu, seen the ingredients of that drink, and said, oh, let me try that. But because you're in the element of local ingredients and local cuisine, and then you look and you say, what? Try and let me see. And I love it because it's made me explore more than I probably would have on my own.
Oh yeah, it was really interesting. I think the last question is, tell us who the ideal Silversea's passenger is.
That's a tough question.
I know.
My immediate answer is anybody that really wants to experience the world. And anybody that wants to experience authentic beauty. We are very lucky and fortunate that we get to serve guests in an ultra luxury way with what we call whispered luxury, which is really about anticipatory service and making sure that we have, all of the greatest amenities and details covered. But most importantly, what I think Silversea guests love about Silversea is that they're traveling with like-minded guests that are very curious, but it may not be the same demographic of guest, if that makes sense. We are very internationally sourced, which I think is one of the greatest things that we have going for us, because you get to meet all different types of people that, again, from a psychographic perspective, love to just experience the world and travel and I think become better as a result of the experiences that they find culturally.
Oh, absolutely. So, Katina, it was great to have you join us today. I will mention a couple of things. Is Silversea's is an excellent product. They're all inclusive, gratuities, and I believe now you're also doing shore excursions.
Beverages, yes.
I mean, basically everything's included. All the specialty restaurants, which are quite a few on their ships. It's not just, I think there's 8 on the Dawn.
There are. Well done.
Thank you.
And
I learned something.
Recently, we introduced something that's called our door-to-door service. And this was something that we actually brought about during the pandemic. We found that people were looking for more inclusivity. And so our door-to-door service is the most inclusive across the space. And it includes Black lane transfers, so sedan transfers from your guest home, from your client's home to the airport. We have airport or flights rather, pre-hotel if it's needed, obviously the cruise component. And then we also do flights home and transfers back to your client's home. So it is the most inclusive product. We obviously have a cruise only component if your guests wish, but really it is about the inclusivity to alleviate the stress of putting all the pieces together.
Oh, absolutely. I will mention one last thing, and that is Silverseas is a subsidiary of Royal Caribbean, which has given you the opportunity, I know, with quite a bit of an expansion in mind, which I think is terrific. So I just want to let everybody know that. And Katina, again, thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone, I thank you. I'm Scott Davis. I'm with ALTOUR. If you don't have an ALTOUR agent but would like to reach out, just send an email to leisure@altour.com and we'll have somebody get back to you. Again, Katina, thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, everybody.